Yeah, look, it was a horrendous time in my life. My marriage fell apart. It was as close to a full breakdown as you could possibly get. I was on the floor crying a blubbering mess under my desk 5 minutes, and I was able to gather myself up, put myself together, and close the biggest deal I'd ever closed. It felt like everything was broken and everything had to be rebuilt.
Today's guest hit rock bottom. Everything all at once fell apart. Wes, tell us about the moment when your whole life collapsed.
Yeah, look, it was a horrendous time in my life. Around 3 years ago, my marriage fell apart, but that affected all aspects of my life and my business and everything. So it was something that I kind of knew was on the horizon, but when I found out what I discovered, it was still almost, it was as close to a full breakdown as you could possibly get. And so I moved out and was sleeping under the desk at the office and all these sorts of things. But I was still able to keep up the facade of everything being okay to a degree. So weirdly enough, when it really struck me was I was on the floor crying a blubbering mess under my desk because everything was so fresh and new. But then I realized I had a Zoom call within 5 minutes or so, and I was able to gather myself up, put myself together, and close the biggest deal I'd ever closed. And initially I thought that was good, that I was able to compartmentalize the pain and the torment in my own life and then put it aside and do business. But it was later that someone mentioned to me that might not be so healthy. There might be things in deep down that you really got to deal with. And certainly that was the case. So it led to my journey in my personal life, but which also led to the biggest breakthroughs in my business as well.
What do you think the transformation challenge was? Like, here you are, you run a successful business, and now one part of your business falls apart. What was the transformation challenge for you? What were you asked to do?
So the aspect of being able to compartmentalize and hide me was both a good thing and a terrible thing, because it was also the thing that was trapping me. So when I went to do the breath work, it was really transformational. I was convulsing and all sorts of things, but I saw some visions, which was really phenomenal. I saw a picture of Jesus, like this stereotypical what Jesus might look like, and the stereotypical Satan face, and it was merging from one to the other. And I realized for me, it meant that it was kind of like understanding I have the capacity to be both, and I am both, and I have failures and flaws as a person. I have the potential to be good and bad, and sometimes both. And it's kind of so the way I present myself to the world isn't necessarily the full picture. And I think we all do that. So for me to even understand that internally helped me. And I think I had to hit rock bottom to get to the point where I would delve into that and recognize my own flaws as a person.
I'm going to want to jump in here. Do you think that this had something to do with that you were putting up a mask and that, okay, so talk to us about this, because I think this part's really important to mention, is that we have this fake it till you make it mentality.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing if you look at it from a creation perspective. But I think the fake it till you make it is oftentimes misconstrued as a pretend to be something that you are not. Not, live as if you are becoming this person that you're designing to be, which I think is a big difference. Where was that for you? What was that internal challenge?
Yeah, so through the process of separation, divorce and everything, a real tipping point for me was everything's on the table, and you've got to, because the business was going along and it was moderately successful, I thought, but I got the business valuation, and he said, he sort of suggested the business wasn't worth much at all, and he highlighted AI as a significant threat. It was becoming evident that it had the potential to take over jobs. So I realized I'd invested and spent all this time building a business, which may not be worth what I thought it was. and just to realize everything that I've built. So at this point, I've realized, okay, so my marriage has failed. So I failed in that aspect, and that has implications. And now my business is maybe it's not as healthy as what it could have been. And so my relationships, my business, everything was challenged. And so I had to from that point of complete breakdown of who I thought I was, because as business people, I think we put our identities, at least to a degree, in what we're building as businesses, because we're so invested in it, obviously, and that's not good or bad. It's just the reality. Certainly for me, that it felt like everything was broken and everything had to be rebuilt. And so, interestingly enough, AI didn't destroy my business as the business evaluator suggested it might. It was something that I could introduce into my business, and I don't think I would have done it to the degree I have if I didn't hit the rock bottom. So, I mean, I've just come off, we report our financial years mid-year, so June, and it's just the strongest financial year we've ever had. So we had little incremental growth even from that point of breakdown, just to have a reality check and say, hey, you're not as good as what you thought you were, and to adjust some things and turn what the business value thought was a threat into an advantage.
How did you manage the emotional aspect? Because at this point, somebody's sitting there with a frying pan and giving you a good whipping over the head multiple times, right? So your relationship's falling apart, your business isn't what you think it is. What's your mental, emotional state at this point? How do you manage to get through that?
The first few things that I did was to build relationships around me. So I don't think it's something men do particularly well, is to build strong relationships where you can be open. And I was certainly like that historically. I was always fairly closed and never reveal personal hardships or anything like that. Just always speak positively and that kind of stuff. But things got so bad that was broken. So I just made sure I built around me great friendships who could have open discussions that I could call upon.
You also mentioned one of the things that, of course, I'm very interested in is alternative medicines, plant medicine, and different types of journeys. How'd you come up with that? Because and forgive me if I say that, you look like a pretty straight-laced kind of guy, So how does somebody like you get into something like that? How does that happen?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate in that I went to a psychologist who was really quite progressive. Now, she didn't encourage plant medicine directly because what I had may not be legal here, but it's moving that way. She encouraged me through the breath work, but I knew the clinic that I went to were pushing along the path of being a place where the plant medicine will be available. Once it's here in Australia, it's kind of in this weird point where it's become legal to a degree, but there's no one facilitating it because it's just complicated.
What was a trigger event in that journey that you took that changed everything for you? Because typically there is.
Yeah. So, I mean, that vision that I had to realize the good and the bad, the plant medicine, I had the one time, and I have I've never had any desire to do it again. I feel like it was something that it certainly wasn't recreational. It wasn't fun. But it was certainly revealing, and I saw lots of things, and I was really intentional about how I did it. I had a journal. I wrote everything down that I could, and just a forgiving process as well. So forgiving my now ex-wife for the things. Now, in any relationship, in any marriage breakdown, there's usually probably both parties have done things wrong along the way. So firstly, to recognize all the things that I probably did wrong, but also to forgive those things that were wronged against me, because I feel like it was hard to move past the need for the feeling that for vindication, to say, you want to, particularly when there's kids involved. So that was a big challenge too.
So now you have this newfound knowledge, right? You are going through some traumatic experiences. You are trying to figure out how to continue with the business. So let's talk about the business. Let's do the shop talk. What is your business? What's the problem that you're solving for your clients?
Yeah, so Uplift 360 is the company here in Australia. So we do websites and SEO, search everywhere optimization is what we're calling it now, because it's not just Google. But the niche I moved into, even to a greater degree, was the construction and trades businesses, because I realized the majority of our very best clients were kind of similar. They were kind of in the same space with construction, building materials, those sorts of things. They've still got legacy clients outside of that, but moving forward, we've really niched in because that's who we serve the best. They're the happiest clients. So we're just going after that a little bit more. And I think the whole breakdown was just a time to reflect and say, okay, what do I really want? And how do I build the business so it's more authentically me? So I'm connecting with people that I naturally work well with, and so for me, I'm a really relational sort of person. So I thought I'm going to do my own networking. I've been to networking events before, but they were kind of structured and everything. But I'm more relaxed and relational. So I just did my own networking event down at the wine bar, which is near here, and just invited people and business people, and a great caliber of people started coming, and just doing things that were healthy and helpful for me as a human, and connecting with the right people.
Would you say that this was the transformation that you may had to undergo anyway? Is that it was to be more real first? Did you discover your humanity in that process in a different way?
Yeah, for sure. It's as you say, the mask is a good way to put it. So, I mean, in deep down internally, your flaws and failings, and you mask it. But I don't think you just mask it to everybody else. You kind of try and mask it to yourself, and then you've got internal conflict. Well, certainly for me. So the internal conflict, I wasn't very healthy at all. Through the marriage, I became really quite overweight, and I think a lot of that was just unhappiness with myself, really. So I just started to do some healthy things, go to the gym, eat healthier. But I think you're right. These things have never been more important, the human aspect, because AI is changing the way we work and the way we interface with the world, really. So it's got the capacity for us to think less, to be less human, which is the downside. But the upside is maybe it can force us to be more human, because it's the one differentiating point.
Let's talk about that. I want you to actually dive into that a little bit more, because you had said this when we were doing our prep for our podcast interview, that you said the one thing that AI cannot replace is humanity. To me, it sounds like in your story, as you're sharing this, is that you had first discovered your own humanity. And then as you recognized who you were and what you liked and disliked, you could add that to your business. Do you think this happens all the time to business owners, that they don't know what that secret, special humanity sauce of themselves is?
Probably has, but it's probably heightened. So we do, as I say, search everywhere optimization we help clients in that, and often speaking to them about their uniqueness. And that's often the humans aspect of who they are as personal brands, because businesses are led by people, and our businesses are usually a reflection of who we are as individuals to a degree. The personality, the strengths, and the weaknesses, but to understand what sets you apart in the world as a business and as an individual leading the business is really helpful. So in terms of like content, so producing content, lots of people are just jumping on ChatGPT and crunching out content because it can help with marketing, but it's just the aggregate sum total of what everyone else is saying. It's pulling everything in from what everyone else has said about a topic and streamlining it into a piece of content. You write something in ChatGPT, for example, but what is it that you can add that's uniquely you and uniquely only you think a certain way? So they're the really interesting part. So it forces us to be more human, really. It forces us to be unique and stand out, not to be like everybody else. So
I like this idea to look in ChatGPT and say, if this is the average of everybody else, how do I compare to that? And I'm actually finding that more people use ChatGPT, the more vanilla it's getting. I am really shocked into the mediocrity of a lot of the stuff that it's now creating. And I wish there was a way to create a container, which I'm sure is going to be the next big thing, on how to keep my information protected within my own framework so that I don't have these mediocre outside pieces. But as it gets so diluted, what I'm hearing you say is that when you discovered who you were, it changed how you show up. What would you tell our audience now that is probably struggling with finding their positioning and being seen and heard in this nutcase perma whiplash market?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I'm often talking to clients about this very thing, maybe in that not those same words. One of the things is often a unlocking of their mind is to ask them, what is it that frustrates you about your industry? What are all your competitors doing wrong? What are you doing different to them? What are the flaws in your industry?
Yeah, what's the irritation? What's the itch you can scratch?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So if there's something that really frustrates you in your
Uh-huh.
industry, so we're working with lots of construction trades, those sorts of things. Here in Australia, I don't know about everywhere, but trades are notorious for turning up late or leaving a mess, those sorts of things. So if I'm speaking to someone in a trade and they say, "Oh, I just really can't stand lateness," so okay, well, this is an important thing because it's unique and it's a frustration for the end customers as well. So just opening up those frustrations, because whatever irritates you the most, it probably drives you as well. And the opportunities to be different in the marketplace, and it's going to be different for every person as well.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think that this emotional and spiritual pain that you were experiencing turned into the fuel of the work that you do right now?
Yeah, definitely it would have, for sure. So the things that I struggled through personally, to my own identity personally and who I was, because everything was torn apart. I had to think about who I was and rebuild myself. And off the back of that, I rebuilt my own business. But some of those key questions I had to ask myself are the things I'm asking from a business context of clients, just so they can unpack who they are, to differentiate and be set apart in the world that's becoming increasingly bland, really, if you just leave the AI to do the work for you.
Did you expect that this journey is going to turn out this way, or what part of this surprised you, if any?
Yeah, so I didn't expect for the business. So I didn't look at it from a business growth perspective. I just looked at the reshaping of how I show up was really about just being happy,
Mm.
just doing things that I enjoyed doing. So the surprising part was the business grew phenomenally, easily the strongest financial year that we've ever had. And I wasn't pursuing more. I wasn't pursuing business growth. I was just pursuing happiness
And personal growth, yes. For somebody who is now listening to this interview and says, well, the guy's an SEO guy, you haven't even talked about that. What do we tell them? What should they do?
Yeah, so there's search everywhere optimization is the thing everyone's interested about. I mean, there's lots of letters being thrown around of how we repackage what was once SEO. So SEO being previously search engine optimization, so ranking as highly as you can in Google, because you rank highly in. Traditionally, you have 10 links or so. It changed over the course of time, but links, and people would visit your website and then hopefully they'd make an inquiry or a booking or whatever. But now everyone's sort of using the internet differently. So people might search. For me, I use ChatGPT all the time. So people aren't even just searching the same way either. So previously you'd search for the product or service and the location. So plumber, Melbourne. So I'm in Victoria, in Melbourne. So, but now everyone kind of realizes the machine understands a full sentence. So you might search for an entire sentence, but precisely what you need and want. So instead of plumber Melbourne, it might be searching for a plumber who can fix particular brand of,
Total toilets.
yeah, whatever it is, and the location. So you need to optimize not just for Google, but for ChatGPT and all the other AI platforms. But it's all kind of the same. All this information is being pulled from online, really. So to have your information published in the areas you can control, firstly, so your website is an area you control because it's your space. So you've got to get that right as a foundational key pillar of what you're doing online. But also other noisier places like social media. So obviously publishing in social media is helpful, but anywhere you can get published. Better than that, the areas you can control, better than that is if you're doing something remarkable and people are talking about it. So if you get mentioned, back historically, you needed a backlink, so a link from another website to yours, and it sort of built authority and trust. And Google say, "Oh, people are linking to this site; it must be credible. Let's boost up the ranking." If it was a reputable link, now you don't even need the backlink; you just need the brand mention because the platforms can read the content, understand the context, understand who's being spoken of in relationship to whatever the topic is. So just being mentioned in media and other people's platforms is really a key thing. So doing things remarkable is obviously ideal, but still to get the strong foundations of your own website right. So you've got your core messaging in there. Your uniqueness has never been more important. Because anyone can publish heaps of content, but those aspects that set you apart are the key. So we're supporting people with that content as well from a search everywhere optimization standpoint as well.
I think that the way this is happening is really changing. So what you're telling me is that the quality really matters.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the quality of your own voice. So one of the key things we're getting done foundationally with the content writing that we help people with is to get the style guide, their voice captured. So everything that's produced and AI assisted, obviously, it's produced in their voice and it's got the nuance of what's important to them. I think that's where people trip up. They just jump straight to trying to get a piece of content together, but doing those foundational key aspects of their own unique voice and how there's the style guide of the writing, but the key messages. So that's laced through everything that's published is really important.
Do you set up like a dictionary type thing, a verbiage for a style guide? Because one of the things that we're very adamant about, so we do, it's a blueprint. It's the 5-star success blueprint. So everything that we do is a blueprint. It's not a framework. We try to consistently refer to things in the same way. How can somebody kind of flush these key components out? Because I do think that's really a very simple way to get your uniqueness out in the world is to have what we call a signature growth system. And then within the system, have a consistent language. How do you help people to figure that out?
That's really important. The way I look at it is your processes and systems, if they act almost like brand, if you can come up with a phrase that defines your unique process and you become known for that, that's magic because you get known for that particular process or whatever it is. Anytime someone's looking for it, you own that space. It's almost like a hashtag, people used to create, or they still do, create hashtags and try to own that thing, but it doesn't just live inside social media anymore. If you can be known for a particular packaged, whatever it is, that's powerful. And I think that's aligned with the way you do the blueprints. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and that's what we teach our clients because I do agree with you. I do not agree with the notion of more is better, even though an Alex Hormozy and a lot of the big internet marketers have gotten to where they go by just like blowing up the market with all this content. But unless you put $1 million out a month in that kind of messaging, you're going to have a real problem. So then flip side of it would be quality and the clarity of the message with which you show up and the conviction that you actually believe into what you're saying yourself. Anything else that you want to add, or do you feel like we got a good little package here that we can give our audience?
Yeah, I think that hopefully that's helpful for the audience. I think, as you were just saying, it's really difficult to take on some of the big players if you're trying to do everything. But if you can get really specific and niched or niche, however you want to call it, then you can own that little piece of territory because it's aligned really deeply with who you are. I think that's the key.
Beautiful. I love it. And so now, as we wrap this up, we covered a lot today. We talked about your own spiritual, I don't want to say awakening, but really a transformation journey to figuring out who you were outside of what you did and outside your marriage. We talked about how you stepped into finding your own authentic voice, and as a result of it, on how the business really, really changed. What part of your story do you think is the greatest gift?
Yeah, I think hopefully the vulnerability of being human is, I think, now is the right time to be vulnerable and to connect with other people and to know we're all flawed. We're not AI bots. We've got personalities and we've got strengths and weaknesses. And I think there's a real beauty in that. So just to own your strengths and your weaknesses, I think is a really powerful position to be in.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that you were open to go to the places that I'm sure are very painful for many people to even think about going, because to admit that we're not perfect and to own our own flaws and to recognize that both sides are required for us to be a human is a challenge for most people. So I want to thank you very much for that.
No, thank you. It's good to talk about it.
And that's it for us for today. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, Founders of the Future. And if you heard something in here today that you feel a friend or a colleague or somebody you care about should hear, please do share this episode. And with that, I say goodbye and until next time. That's it for this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, Founders of the Future. If you're done playing small and ready to build the future on your terms, subscribe, share, and help us reach more trailblazers like you. And if you're serious about creating, growing, and scaling a business that's aligned with who you are, schedule your Uncovery session at uncoverysession.com. Lead with vision. Move with purpose. Create your future.